Aloha, beautiful beings, and welcome to another episode of the Yoni Havana podcast, where we explore consciousness, looking into how things work in the universe so we can enjoy life more and become more whole. In this episode, I chat with Nicky Mack, a somatic coach specializing in sustainable and holistic healing, to explore the powerful practice of somatic shadow work. Nicky explains how this approach combines breathwork, conscious movement, felt sense, mindfulness, journaling, and more to guide individuals into their bodies to feel what is present. By addressing the hidden aspects of the self, our shadows, we can work through emotional and physical pain in a supportive environment, ultimately becoming whole again and embodying our true, authentic selves. We also dive into Nicky's transformative experiences with Iboga and how ancestral healing has impacted his spiritual journey. Additionally, Nicky touches on the importance of balancing personal growth with joy and playfulness, and the pitfalls of taking the spiritual path too seriously. This episode is packed with wisdom on healing, self-exploration, and the deep connection between mind, body, and spirit. Please note, we experienced a few minor technical difficulties with the internet connection, which caused some brief moments of overlap in our conversation. I appreciate your understanding. It's only a handful of instances, but what Nicky shares is absolutely worth it. Before we dive into this episode, I'd like to read to you a short testimonial from one of our Men of Integrity retreats, which is a profound 4-day journey towards authentic manhood, led by Michael Tierno and me, Yoni Havana. These retreats help men embrace integrity, heal past wounds, and build a supportive community. Here is the testimonial. One of the best weekends of healing, relaxing, laughing I've ever experienced. The love, care, and thoughtfulness by the MOY team is unmatched and astonishing. Their genuine hearts and motives are exemplary and noteworthy. I'm proud to say I had the courage to explore this portion of my body and be open to plant medicines. If you get a chance to be a part of a healing retreat, do it for your loved ones and do it for yourself. You deserve it. If the Men of Integrity retreats intrigue you, I encourage you to visit our website, moi.community. Now on to the show. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this insightful conversation with Nicky Mack about somatic shadow work, ancestral healing, and the balance of work and play. I hope. Nicky, thank you for coming on to the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's awesome to have you, have a conversation with you for the first time recorded. I ran into you through Elizabeth Bast from Soul Central. I've had a few conversations with her as I'm planning on going to Soul Central to experience Iboga myself. And I was called to Iboga and found her in the retreat center with Chor when I was thinking about one of my clients who could really benefit from going there. And however it worked out, I saw your face there. I started following you. And we have a bunch of things in common that I'm going to touch on soon. But first, I'd love to hear about your experience. We can start there. It's all central with Iboga, if you may.
Yeah, it was deeply life-changing. Chor and Elizabeth are amazing people, just period. And the container that they've created and the container that they hold Iboga with, it's amazing. Like, my life was permanently changed by my relationship with them. So it was an incredible experience.
When did you do it for the first time? How many times have you been there?
So it's 2 retreats that I've been there. Last, I believe it was October. I went for my first retreat there. It was my first plant medicine experience. Before that, my only exposure has just been with cannabis and psilocybin. And so Iboga was my first experience with like a heavy plant medicine. I went there for one ceremony in early October, and then I went again in March. And then in my ceremony in March, I was actually initiated with Chor. So Chor is one of the I think the only I mean, I don't want to speak for him, but he is a Nima and within the Bwiti tradition, and Nimas can initiate people into the Bwiti tradition. So um, initiation into the Bwiti, and there's further initiations and further ceremonies that that are required, like going to Gabon and going for further initiations. But the initiation there, without exposing the process or the experience, it's a commitment to deepening your relationship with Iboga in a much more intimate way. Because when you go through a ceremony and you work with plant medicine for the first time, that's one thing to just go through a ceremony with it. But an initiation is more like it's kind of like, I grew up Catholic, so it's like, getting there's baptism and then there's confirmation. Those are like initiations into a relationship with a certain entity. So I think from my experience with the initiation, it was a very intentional decision to become to have an intimate relationship with this, because the first time is like, okay, this is fun, and then the second time is like, okay, now let's actually start working together, like it's committing to each other.
What's your commitment looking like? Are you gonna work with Iboga once a year? What is there any cadence you set for yourself?
The commitment right now is a daily practice of so there's two parts of it for me. There is reconnecting to the spirit of Iboga, um, and through intentional meditation and prayer, and energy work. And then there's also an intentional commitment to my soul, and to what my ceremonies revealed to me about what my soul needs. And yeah, so it's a really a daily practice in terms of a timeline of when am I going to go back for ceremonies. That's up in the air. I would love to have the time and money and resources to go back to Soul Central as often as I can. Um, but what is more important to me is the integration. I think the integration from plant medicine experiences is equally important, if not more important, than the plant medicine experience itself.
100%. By the way, if it's showing laggy, it's going to record high quality for both of us on our computer. It's going to look better when we release it. So,
Cool. Yeah, no problem.
getting back to it, I think the integration is, it's hard to say because it's a chicken and egg, but the integration is more important. I've seen and heard of many people who have done many plant medicine ceremonies, and they keep going back to plant medicine with all kinds of plants, even synthetic ones, constantly looking for some sort of relief, and they get some honeymoon period of feeling more connected, perhaps, to their soul, higher self. And they don't do the integrations, that they keep going back to get really receive the same messages. there's no progress being made. There's some peak experiences that are beautiful of seeing beyond the veil, but they're not really doing what, we're living here in this third dimensional reality. This is what we're here to do. We're here on planet Earth, and this is where the work to be done. So I think, and I think I've heard Elizabeth say it's 90% integration, 10% ceremony.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking to her a few times, I bow to her level of experience and connection with Source, because she's up there. And I've spoken to her only a handful of times. It's obvious from the way she expresses herself. It's her energy is absolutely next level.
Yeah, the both
Super
of
cool.
them.
I'm curious to hear what brought you. I need to speak to Joe. I've heard him on a few podcasts, and I'm excited to connect with him
Hmm.
eventually. Yeah, I'm curious to hear what brought you to Soul Central.
So, my brother, who is transitioned, he in recovery from his addiction to painkillers, specifically in getting off Suboxone. um, he he went to an Ibogaine clinic um, a year before he passed. He went to an Ibogaine clinic, and I remember when he was telling me about Iboga and Ibogaine, I felt like my soul, when he was telling me about it, I felt something kind of awaken in my soul, almost like I've heard this before and this is what I need. It's like, and I felt an immediate calling to it when he was telling me about it. Um, and then last year, I was going through a really, really deep transition in my life, super deep transition. Um, yeah, I was engaged, and that relationship I moved out of. I was in a career trajectory that I needed to change, and I was coming to a place in my life where I realized I was completely lost. I've lived a life where I've always had a map and a compass, and I've worked really hard to always have a very well functioning map and a very well functioning compass to guide me through my journey in life. And last year, I got to the first time in my life where I was looking at my map and my compass, and I was just like, it's both fucked. Like, I don't know where I'm going anymore. I don't know where this compass is taking me. I don't know what's going on. And immediately I started thinking about Iboga. It came back into my mind. I hadn't thought about it, since for 7 to 8 years prior, for when my brother had his experience with Ibogaine. And so I started thinking about Iboga, and also because I've never had a plant medicine experience, and a lot of my peers have had plant medicine experiences. So I was like, all right, you know what? Maybe let me look into this. I started researching um, Iboga, as well as uh, the name is eluding me right now. What's the other really big one that people are using? Um, Ayahuasca, yes, ayahuasca. Um, I started looking up Iboga and ayahuasca, and then it was very clear to me that Iboga is the medicine that I needed, because what I was needing was a very intimate relationship to my soul and my ancestors. It was very clear to me that for me to move forward, I needed a more intimate relationship with my ancestors. And that it was very clear from all the research that I've done that, like, if you're trying to get in touch with ancestors, Iboga is the way to go. And so I started doing research about different Iboga providers, and from everything that I found online, Chor and Elizabeth seemed like they were the most valid carriers of Iboga in the West. Um, yeah, and because for me, I I take this shit very seriously. A little too seriously at times, but for good reason. Um, I walk the spiritual path with a certain intensity and with a certain integrity that I require of myself and of the people that I work with. So my standard for plant medicine carriers and providers is very high, and they absolutely hit the mark when I was doing that research.
That's awesome. Lots of respect and resonating a lot. I've been called to this medicine also for ancestral work, which is the deepest work that I'm doing on personally,
Mm,
on my own. I was initiated into this work with ayahuasca in 2018, exactly 6 years ago, actually. It's August 2024 when we're recording this episode, and that's when I've done ayahuasca for the first time. So super interesting. I'm curious, do you communicate or have some sort of communication with your ancestors after
Absolutely.
the Iboga experiences?
Absolutely. Yeah. What was really beautiful about there was a moment in my Iboga, my time there at Soul Centro where I was out, I was out of the official ceremony container. And I was in my room, I was resting, I was like recovering. Um, and when I was in my room, one of my ancestors came to me in a really vivid way. And what I took from that experience was they the ceremony is like life is the ceremony. The ceremony is not just the container that the plant medicine is administered in and all of that happens in. That my life is the ceremony. And so it's really been a daily practice of consciously reconnecting to them, also similar to yourself, this is the deepest personal work that I'm doing right now is cultivating a more and more intimate relationship with my ancestors. Even over the last week, I was going through a really, really challenging time in my inner journey, and 100% my ancestors got me out of it because of just like how I've been relying on them, how I've been calling upon them, how I've been giving them reverence. So yeah, it's a daily practice that I've learned, and that I think what Iboga's role in it was like making it more intimate. It gave me, because from the way that I understand Iboga is it really turns up your spiritual conductivity and invites in, um, depending upon the container, and your relationship, it invites in certain presences. And my experience at Soul Centro, because I went with the explicit intention of developing a deeper connection to my ancestors, both Chor and Elizabeth made sure that that happened.
Sounds amazing. Sounds super deep and profound.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear if you may share what do you mean by too serious sometimes? What's too serious?
Mm, that's a great question. Was too serious. Um, my I lose track of when my ego gets too involved and when I'm not having fun anymore. So those are the two markers for me that I'm taking something too seriously. When I'm taking it too personally and my ego is too involved and I'm not having fun anymore.
When you say you're not having fun anymore, I'm thinking about it, healing and healing ancestral bloodline, healing ancestral trauma, memories that are within us in our DNA in our bodies. Sometimes it's not fun. I mean, there's a lot of liberation happening from letting the pain express itself. But what do you mean by fun?
Mm.
Where do you draw the line?
Right. It's hard. It's a so that I love that question, and I don't have an answer to that question. I am living in that question right now because um for me something doesn't have to be fun for it to be fun. So, for example, I'm really deep into somatic shadow work. Like that's really where my specialty lies. And with the practice of somatic shadow work, I feel all of the things that aren't fun, typically fun, deep amounts of fear, deep amounts of anger, deep amounts of grief, deep amounts of sadness, deep amounts of pain. And the way that I approach my practice and my journey and my walk is I learn to enjoy even those moments, to enjoy the suck, it and so in that way, even those moments are fun. Even the fights with my partner are fun. Even the grief of my brother dying is fun. Um, the dark side of that, and again, the shadow side of that is I'm a workaholic. So I will work endlessly on myself, on my passion products, on whatever, volunteering, serving, and when the line between work and play gets blurred in that way, I can be working 24/7, and I've deluded myself into thinking that I'm having fun and that I'm playing, but I'm actually just working. But because of the nature of the addiction, I've convinced myself that I'm just having fun. But it's like in reality, when's the last time I laughed? When's the last time I went out with friends? And so that's what I mean about I don't really have an answer to the question. This is definitely a question that I'm living in right now. And specifically in terms of like what I mean by so and specifically what I mean by this in the context of spirituality, um, I can take the spiritual walk too seriously sometimes. And what I mean by that is um I won't be having fun anymore. I won't be playing with it. Um yeah. So that's really what I mean by it.
I get it. I get it. I'm relating. I'm wondering, as you said, there's joy in what I'm hearing. There's joy in the experience of life, the whole gamut, the
Mhm.
full spectrum of the lower vibrations of fear, shame, grief, guilt, etc. Just being super present with it and letting those sensations, emotions, and thoughts appear with no judgment and with acceptance, with full acceptance for the sake of the
Mhm.
experience. And what I'm hearing you say is sometimes by playing in those vibrations, it's you can there's so much to explore, and it's so meaningful. It's so can be sensual, sensational and sensual of the
Mhm.
senses. And so, when is the balance going towards the lighter forms of life with the actual definitions of, I'm thinking of map of consciousness, of joy, of the laughter, of
Mhm.
the lightness of it. And
Exactly.
so I'm totally relating. Yeah, it's all joyful to you. It's just the balance of the vibrations of life, if I'm hearing correctly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think my personal journey, I need to, and I am moving more towards a more joyful, more playful, less serious um approach to all of it.
What are some of the activities or ways of beings that bring you more of those lighter stages, lighter states?
Um Dancing, I love dancing. Dancing for me is like just life bringing. Um so dancing is absolutely, and then also martial arts. So and anything in between, anything in between. Physical activity, playing sports, um, but yeah, mostly right now in my life, it's dancing.
So I saw you. Do you host ecstatic dance? What do we call them? Events.
So I'm a part of a group called Reboot NYC. It's not exactly ecstatic dance. We are an outdoor dance community, and a lot of the way that we hold our container is influenced by some of the cultural elements of ecstatic dance, like consent and just this idea of you're here to dance. We don't, it's not officially, we don't really call it an ecstatic dance, gathering or anything like that, because we don't really play ecstatic dance music. And also we're open to the street. Like we're an outdoor dance community. We're very much like a traveling block party. um but yeah, so that's a huge part of it. So that is a huge part of my source of joy and playfulness. And then also I go to five rhythms classes with my partner, and those are also really extremely rejuvenative.
Did you say five rhythms?
Hmm.
What is that?
So five rhythms is a uh I'm not super familiar with it technically. I've just been taking the classes for a little while. From my understanding of five rhythms is that it's a system of uh dance, or uh a way of creating a container for dance, where this woman, I believe her name is Gabrielle Roth, she did like research, traveled the world and whatever, and found these five universal rhythms that humans kind of vibe with. And so she created a system of uh DJing, or musical orchestration of playing these five rhythms in a certain order, and each rhythm instigates a certain type of movement. So there's no teaching, like when you listen to this song, this is how you're supposed to move. There's no teaching involved with it. It's just five very distinct rhythms that are played inside of this container, and each rhythm instigates a type of movement from our bodies. And there you have to be a like certified five rhythms. It's like there's like a year-long training to become a certified, five rhythms facilitator. But five rhythms is where the culture of ecstatic dance comes from. The difference is five rhythms is very structured. Like in order to be a facilitator, you have to take the training, and you can't um, stray from the pattern of the five rhythms. There's a certain sequence that's involved. Whereas ecstatic dance is the cultural intention of five rhythms, but without such a rigid structure.
Super interesting. I love dancing, so I was curious to hear about five rhythms. I was looking at bachata and other dance classes and events for my wife and I to go together because we both love dancing. She takes an adult hip hop class once a week,
Nice.
and I'm just doing dance. I used to take. I'm kind of on and off with the membership. What's it called? Gaga people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've heard
Mm-hmm.
of it.
Yeah.
Um, it is, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and I've seen that you posted something from Ido Portal. I'm curious if you worked with his method, movement culture, before.
Yeah, never personally, unfortunately, because his working with him, I have always found to just be absurdly expensive. But rightfully so. He is the best of the best, when it comes to what he does in terms of movement culture. But I have been studying his work like very, very closely for the past 10 years. Like when he first came out, there was a video on YouTube called like "Free Yourself" or something, or "Control Yourself" or something like that. um, and so there was a video on YouTube that he blew up with, maybe 10 or 12 years ago at this point. And I've been following him and his work really intimately since. So um, I don't consider myself a student because I've never actually studied with him, but in a way I also do consider myself a student in that I've studied the shit out of his work from a distance, and have also been living it in my own way. I have a really really deep resonance with his practice, and I um uh intuitionally have a very similar practice. Is similar to him. I grew up in capoeira, and capoeira is an incredibly powerful culture, that has a lot of wisdom to it in terms of what our bodies are capable of. Um, so yeah, I draw a lot of inspiration from his practice.
Super cool. I'm a big fan of Ido, and I got to study and work directly with one of his closest mentees, Johnny Sapinoso, in San Francisco.
Nice.
So for a bit over a year, I was training with
Nice.
a group there. I was only going twice a week. Most of the people there were, trainers and people that are super, super dedicated. They were training 6 to 8 hours a day.
Hmm.
I was training 2.5 hours twice a week.
Yeah.
I was by far the least capable of the group, but it was great to be, amongst those people. And I love movement. I love the expression of movement. And similar to the five rhythms, what Ido has done is studied beyond, capoeira. He studied boxing. He
Hmm.
studied so many different sports and ways of movement, and figured out the common denominators of the foundations of movement and what's possible. And it's an exploration.
Hmm.
It's exploration of the human body, exploration
Hmm.
of really of expression of our souls.
Yeah.
So yeah, I saw that, and I saw that you're doing a
Yeah.
bunch of cool movement stuff. This seems very organic, what you're doing, and fun.
Hmm.
And so, anyways,
Yeah.
I brought it up because lots in common.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought it up because a lot of the reason why I resonate with his path so much is because for the past like 12 years, I've been on a very similar path of trying to find, because I grew up practicing capoeira and yoga and learned a really potent form of energy healing when I was in college about 12 years ago. And since then, I've been on a path of trying to find the like one practice that I can distill. Um, because one of the things that has been really important to me with capoeira and with yoga is to not appropriate somebody's culture or a people's culture that is not mine. Even though I have Afro-Brazilian heritage, even though I my mother's Brazilian and I lived in Brazil for a while, I trained capoeira. It's really important to me to find what is authentic. And so a lot of my work and a lot of what I do now with people, when I work with people as a somatic therapist, is to help them find their movement practice. Like, what is your unique movement practice? What is your meditation practice? What is your energy practice? Um, to try to like tap inside of them and draw without. So a lot of those movements that you see me doing, it's really coming from my practice of going inside of myself and figuring out how does my body want to move.
Super cool. I'd love to hear more about how you work with individuals. And you said you transitioned quite a bit from, figuring out that you were lost with the compass, and made quite a bunch of changes. So
Mhm.
I'm curious, and if you can also, at that breath, um, just give a simple definition of what somatic work means, somatic shadow work means for everybody.
For sure. Yeah. Um, somatics, as I understand it, is a an endogenous wisdom that our mind, our body, our spirit, and our environment are one. And the reason why I use the word endogenous is because that wisdom is from inside of us. Um, and specifically, I use endogenous not to take away from the the cultures and the people that like indigenous peoples, um, and other cultures and peoples around the world that live with this wisdom. Um, my intention in using the word endogenous is to make people very aware that this new phase of awareness, because somatics is becoming a new, wave of awareness in white consciousness and in American consciousness. Um, but it's not new. The only reason why it's new is because of colonization. And so my intention in using the word endogenous is for people to become aware that this isn't something new that we're learning, that the mind and the body and spirit are one. Inside of the context of your life, this might be a new concept, but it's important to remember that it's not new. Um, the common understanding of somatics that I have an issue with is that it's a body-centered form of psychotherapy or a body-centered form of psychology. Um, and oftentimes when people define somatics, they'll define it by its Greek roots. And the issue that I have with both of those is when we say that somatics is just a body-centered approach of psychotherapy, we are still removing the body from our environment. We're still isolating the body, and we are not extrapolating what we mean by the body. Like, most of the time when when somebody thinks about their body, they think of this inside of our skin, where my body ends at my skin. But we are extensions of the earth body. So somatics, for me, you can't have a conversation about your body and being body centered without also being earth centered. So that's how I approach somatics, for myself and the way that I walk. And this is where, I play the line of sometimes being too serious with things, because I care so much about this work, and the mission of making people more aware of our connection to the earth, um, that when people use somatics in a very one-dimensional way, I feel defensive over it, because it's a much larger conversation that is very much rooted in colonization.
And so tell me more about the work you're doing with individuals or groups.
So it varies from person to person depending upon what they're coming to me with. Um, a lot of the reason why I say that what I specialize in is somatic shadow work, and what I mean by that is, if someone's coming to me with chronic pain, like chronic low back pain, or somebody's coming to me with chronic depression, or some autoimmune issue, whatever it is that a person is coming to me to help change and alleviate, my direction in working with them is to go in to the thing that they have been moving away from. Um, at the same time as, in a very respectful, very careful kind of way. So that's really what I mean about somatic shadow work. So, for example, if somebody has chronic low back pain and that's what I'm working with, a lot of the times I'll start asking them questions about, when does it hurt? When does it not hurt? And digging more deeply into the questions, we can come to a place of, like, let's say, for example, your back hurts the next day after you get into an argument with your partner, and so it's like, okay, so the pain, the symptom may be your back pain, and you may be wanting me to help you alleviate the symptom. And I think that's where a lot of people operate, is a lot of people, when they come to a coach or a therapist, or a doctor or whomever, they're operating from a place of, I have this symptom, I have this disease, I have this problem, and I just want the symptom to go away. I want the pain to go away. Uh, where the pain is not really the problem. And that's really where I take people, is like, yes, we deal with the symptoms, and I help people, deal with the symptoms, whether it's through a movement routine or a meditation routine or a sleeping routine. So I work with people very holistically, and our first session together, I take a holistic health assessment, where for 90 minutes we go through every element of your life, your ancestry, your sleep, your nutrition, your body, your family history, everything. Like, as much of your history, of you as I can possibly assess. Um and then we start going into, down the line, what's underneath the symptoms? What are the real problems that are creating the symptoms? And that's really where the shadow work comes in, because that's not really where most people want to look. That's really usually the root of the problem, is the place that we're trying to avoid, the place that we're scared of the most. And so that's how I work with people. I take people through into that space and through that space.
How did you get into this work?
Um, I've been, so for the past 12 years, I've been obsessed with the relation, as cliche as it sounds, the relationship between the mind, the body, and the spirit. And specifically, I've been operating with the awareness that they are not separate. However, certain modalities work with certain dimensions of ourselves more than others. So, for example, going to the gym and working out works your body more than sitting and meditating would. Um, so how I got into this was, over the past 12 years, I've been trying to figure out what is a way of living that is inherently uniting all of those elements of ourselves. What is a practice that we can have, a singular practice that we can have, that unites and heals and restores and strengthens ourselves as a whole, where we're not talking about my body anymore. We're not talking about my mind. We're not talking about my spirit. We're talking about me as a whole. So it's really been, what's gotten me here is really this question of, what is one practice that a person can have that does the the stringing together of everything else. And that's really what I've come to, and that's how I work with people, is after that phase of initial assessment, I'll give them a movement routine, a meditation routine, and a journaling routine. And the style of movement and the style of meditation and the style of journaling that I've created, because it's rooted in somatics, because it's rooted in the wisdom that all of them are connected, the movement routine, the meditation routine, and the journaling, all of them are simultaneously developing and strengthening whatever that person's goal is. It's simultaneously conditioning their entire self.
Are you basing your work based on specific somatics work, or is this a lot of self-taught stuff? You're bringing a lot of different things together.
It's a combination of a lot. So I've studied a lot of, so I came to, the way that I describe it is like I came to somatics through the back door, because I've never, that's not true. I did take a training from somatic experiencing, but by the time that I took that training of somatic experiencing, it was all very, very familiar to me, because I, like, over the past 12 years, I've been studying a lot of different forms of energy work. Just, something like a pranic healing, which is a form of medical qigong, crystal healing, essential oils, tuning forks, massage therapy, exercise therapy, NLP, yoga. Like, I've been just learning as many different forms of healing as possible. And similarly to how Ito kind of synthesized everything into one movement practice, I feel similarly in that I've synthesized everything into one lifestyle practice. And because I've studied a lot of different forms of energy work, of meditation, of movement, I came to a point maybe like 5 years ago when I was trying to find. Everybody would ask me like, what do you do? Like, what is your practice? And I wouldn't have a word for it, because it's like, there at the time, somatics wasn't as big of a name, like 5 or 6 years ago. Um, and and that's when I came across this word somatics, and I was like, oh shit, it is a thing. There is a word for this. So that's how I kind of came into it. I came into somatics through the back door, because I didn't really just take a somatics workshop and I'm like, oh my god, somatics. So I'm coming into it with a different set of tools than most somatic therapists.
Super cool, an organic path.
Hmm.
I'm curious whether you have clarity on it or if you're willing to give it a stab. How do you define your purpose?
Mm. Hmm. That's a good question. So there's two sides to this question for me. Um, so when I so after my brother, so in the time period that my brother passed, it was in a time period where multiple people, four people in my family, transitioned around the same time period. So I was in a super dark place. I was at the bottom, like, the way that I lived it and felt it was that I was at the bottom of the ocean every day. I lived there. Um, like, the depression, the suicidal ideation, like, it was home to me for a long time. And what initially got me out of that was not only um a yoga practice that I got into at the time, but this idea of purpose. I came to a place where I asked myself, why am I alive? Why am I, like, why? Why go on? Um, and the answer that I came to is, I am an inherently unique person. No two people are the same. I have a uniqueness to me. So what that means to me is that I can do something here, and I can bring something to the world, and I can be of value to the world in a unique way, in a way that nobody else can. And I saw that as purpose. So I have a purpose because of my uniqueness. Um, and I saw that purpose as bringing my uniqueness to life and flourishing it and cultivating it. So on that side of the street, I define my purpose as living in alignment with my soul, living in alignment with how I feel I am most meant to be alive. The shadow side of that is, as a workaholic, I have learned that purpose is the work addiction of my ego, because purpose for me is another thing to do. It's another it's an infinite thing for me to work on, for me to bring to life. When I'm bored and I have nothing to do and I can't just be, I have my purpose. I have something to do. I have something to take me out of the abyss of nothingness, of meaninglessness. And that is the dark side of purpose. And that is the shadow side of purpose. That I believe that purpose, as it's spoken about in, the dimension of psychology and in spiritual worlds, um, has this element of, or has been corrupted by capitalism and colonization and these mentalities of, I need value, I have to do something, I have to, yeah, and so I think when so that's the shadow side of how I define my purpose also, is that I also define my purpose as a symptom of my work addiction.
What have you seen when you live in alignment with your soul? Uh, is a theme that has been most serving humanity,
Mm,
or the earth, or consciousness, the universe, however you'd like to think about it.
mm. I'm way more relaxed. I'm just way more chill about it. Um, I feel, and this goes into the ancestral practice, because a lot of where my purpose has been guiding me is to reconnect with my ancestors and to do a lot of ancestral work. Um, and that feels extremely aligning with my soul. Um, and when I am in that, I feel alleviated from the just the complexities and the stresses of my environment that I internalize. Mm, mm. I think it depends on the person.
As a theme, some themes,
Yeah, yeah, that's so
just a few themes.
yeah. The themes are, there's really two major themes. One is people are inspired and motivated and uh, are nourished by my walk and my way of being. Um, and the other theme is that people are threatened and scared, um, and repulsed. And I think it's like, when you turn on a light, there are some entities that are attracted to the light, and there are other entities that are repulsed from the light.
So, do most people experience both themes in your presence?
Um, that's a good question. I think to a degree, both experiences probably live in everybody. Yeah, I would say that, and maybe like the quantities or the ratios of those experiences probably, change from person to person, but I would think both exist in everybody to a degree, yeah.
Beautiful. Super cool. Sounds like you're illuminating to others a lot of, and as you said, somatic shadow work. So, illuminating unconscious, subconscious parts of themselves. And sometimes they look at you and they're super inspired and motivated, and you call it nourished. They feel good, they feel more connected. And sometimes, as those parts come up, it can be overwhelming, it can be scary, it can be repulsing because we have the full gamut.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if in the oneness we are everything, and there are parts that have perhaps judgment, one, and two, yeah, there's repulsion, I think, from of states of beings. That's duality.
Mm-hmm.
That's the dance of duality of neutrons and protons. That's how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
They're attracted and they're repulsed at the same time.
Yeah.
That's what they don't touch.
Yeah. And I think also what's worth saying is that I think people often idolize the spiritual path and idolize people walking a spiritual path because of this idolization of light. Um, and for myself, the when I say people are threatened and repulsed, and feel judgment, um, I think that that can often be interpreted as like, oh, my light is highlighting your darkness and you don't want to see your darkness. But those who carry a bright light also carry darkness, a deep darkness. So when walking this path, it's not just like, oh, I'm like, for example, if I were to lose a friendship because I'm walking my soul's journey and I am evolving and I am living in further alignment with my soul, and that results in me losing a friendship, that story can often be understood as like, oh, because I'm evolving and because my light is getting brighter, then that person, just doesn't fit. And again, I think it dehumanizes the real experience because, again, we're idolizing the soul's journey and the light that I'm carrying. When in reality, the darkness that is being resonated in that person, the resonance may not be coming from my light. The resonance may be coming from my shadows. So oftentimes, I see this a lot in spiritual containers with spiritual teachers and leaders and people that just carry themselves as like healers, especially, um, where if we are in interaction with each other and you're getting triggered and your darkness is coming up, your insecurities are coming up, it's really easy for me to just say, oh, it's my light that's bringing your darkness to the surface. How do I know? What if it's my darkness that I'm not looking at that's bringing their darkness to the surface? Because in reality, that's also how music works. That's how instruments work. If you put two guitars next to each other and you strike the E chord on this guitar is going to ring. So who am I to say that it's my light that's bringing up your darkness? I think it's a very egotistical, very manipulative, way of walking. And this is really why I focus so much on shadow work, because there are shadows to everything. And the more spiritual of a path that people walk, the more I see them hiding their shadows and forgetting or not paying attention to their shadows because they're so focused on their light.
I get it. The peak experiences of light and the angels and all those things are alluring and nourishing. And as you said earlier, people are looking for alleviation. They're looking for freedom. There are different parts of selves are looking for that, so they focus on that. And you said it earlier with the symptoms. There are symptoms, and they're looking for those states of, I can rest now.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, obviously, there's a light bulb going on that says, hey, pay attention to me. Pay attention to me.
Right.
I'm uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You touched on it earlier when you said, you'll get into the work sometimes when you're bored, or I don't know how exactly you said it, but there's some perhaps discomfort in being bored because there's some sort of shadow that says, hey, listen, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just be with it, or be as you said, some of the not feeling useful, not feeling needed in the world, and let's just be, which is also part of the shadow, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Of perhaps there's some labels to that, to the mind of laziness or unworthiness.
Mm-hmm.
So super interesting. There are a bunch of things at play.
Absolutely.
You said mind, body, and soul, and
Absolutely.
yeah, super cool exploration and path you're on. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
exciting.
Yeah, thank you. And that's really why it's so important to me to involve the environment. And the environment is not just trees and dirt and grounding and getting sun exposure. The environment is racism, sexism, capitalism, all of this, like ableism, like colonization. That is the environment also. That I think that is not there's not enough space for those elements in the conversation in the spiritual communities. And I think that is because when we think about why is there so much suffering in the conception of meaninglessness? Why do I feel empty and depressed when I think of meaninglessness in general, or purposelessness, or having no value? And the somatic experience of those concepts comes from our environment, comes from these cultures of capitalism and cultures of suppression and cultures of colonization. And it's extremely important to feel through these things so that we can recognize the monsters that live inside of us, the shadows that live inside of us, the demons that live inside of us are not actually monsters. They're not actually demons. They're not actually shadows, in a dangerous or violent or harmful way. Um, and so yeah, that's really why this work and the way that I do it, not to toot my own horn. I hope that, and I hope that there are other people that are doing somatic work in this way as well, and I'm sure there are. But that's really why doing somatic work is in this way is so important, and walking the spiritual path holistically is so important.
What are some of the results that people get from working with you? Do they have deeper clarity, deeper inner peace? They're more inspired to be. What are some of the, I can say, themes again
Mm.
of the results of doing this somatic
Mhm.
shadow work?
Yeah, so in the beginning, the results are, symptom relief of whatever they came to me for. Um, and then it's like deeper relief, like, oh, I'm not arguing with my self anymore. I'm not arguing with my partner anymore. I'm not, or as much. Or I have a deeper relationship to my child. Um, and the benefits and the results change as time goes on. Like my longest standing client, I've been working with him for 6 years now. Um, Maybe like 5 or 6 years now, and or is this 2024? Yeah, about probably like 6 years. And the benefits just are evolving as well. But in terms of a theme that I think is the end result of developing a holistic life practice is a level of peace through it all. And yeah, a level of like, when shit gets hard, when the pain comes back, when the depression comes back, when the arguments come back, there's a level of peace because there's an experienced understanding that I have what it takes to get through this. Getting through this is getting easier. I'm spending less time in this place of stress or pain or tension or depression or whatever else it is. Um, and from those experiences, there's a general sense of peace of like, okay, I'm good. Like, no matter what happens through the ups and through the downs, I'm good. And I'm very explicit about that when I start working with somebody is that I do not believe in taking away elements of a person's human experience, like telling somebody you're going to live pain free, you're going to live anger free, you're going to live depression free, like you're not going to feel fear anymore, you're not going to feel angry anymore, you're not going to feel pain anymore. Cool. If that's the way somebody works and that's what somebody's looking for, great. I personally do not live a life, nor do I want to live a life um, that is void of elements of the human experience. Um, so that is what I'm very explicit with people when I work with them is like, if somebody's coming to me for with long-term depression, is like you will spend less time being depressed. It will get easier getting through the episodes of depression, but I make no promise to you that you will never feel depressed again, or that you will never feel angry again, or never feel pain again, or never argue with your partner again. Because to me, it's an illusion. What I'm saying to you is I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to put it into the shadows of your life, and we're never going to see it again. Whereas I do the opposite. It's we're gonna go into the shadows so that you can learn to enjoy and love and live with all of it.
Love it. Super love it. Super cool. Um, as we come to a close, I'm curious if there is a recent experience that blew your mind, or it doesn't have to be too recent, but if there's something that pops to mind you'd like to share with our audience.
Mm, hmm. A recent experience that I've been having internally that has really been blowing my mind is how environmental emotions are. And the idea of this uh, I got from a podcast I was listening to with Bio Akumalafe. Brilliant human being. I'm obsessed with his work. Um, And one of the things that he spoke about is how, because we have such an egocentric and human centric perspective of life, we believe that everything that we're feeling inside of us is inside of us and lives inside of us and is coming from inside of us. So when I feel happy, it's because of the chemicals in my body. When I feel depressed, it's because of the chemicals in my body. When I feel angry, it's because I ate something yesterday that's making me feel inflamed. Um, and so about like a month ago, I listened to that podcast where he was talking about the potential environmental relationship of emotions, where maybe it's thinking of emotions as a more nebulous experience. Um, and as I've been kind of walking through my life over the past month and a half since listening to that, I've been a lot more observant of the movement of emotions through me. And I've been way less entangled with them because I'm not claiming ownership over them. Um, and so that's really been, and again, this is something I'm still living in and still experiencing. But it's really been blowing my mind because um, it's been freeing my mind of this perception that I own my emotions, that I have my emotions, that emotions are a thing that I have inside of me, as opposed to an experience, an immersive experience that I'm in with my environment. Um, so yeah, that's been something that's been really changing for me.
If that's the case for emotions, do you take ownership over the words you speak, or over the choices you make, or the with your body? I'm wondering if there's a line where you draw with, "This is my doing. This is my free will,"
Yeah, I
and
think.
not necessarily
Mhm.
about free will, but this is what I is in my uniqueness is doing.
Mhm. Similarly to your previous question of like the line between work and fun, or like work and play, um, I I don't think that there is a line. Um, I don't feel that there is a line. I don't I think my mind can create a line. Um, when I feel into it for myself, um, I'm starting to feel more and more the reality that, and this is the thing about words, the reality that I don't exist, and that is like a rabbit hole and can of worms for people, because because of the function of language, um, that statement is so charged. There's so much in that. Um, the way that I live with that question, really, because I don't have an answer to it. The way that I live inside of that question is a moment to moment experience of, like, like grabbing something and touching something and holding something and being really curious about what is this holding? What does it feel like to hold this thing? Am I holding it? Is it moving as I'm holding it? And so that's how I kind of relate to thoughts that I'm having and feelings that I'm having, and behaviors that I'm enacting. Um, a theme of my own therapy for the past 2 to 3 years has been my relationship to control, and going really, really deep into not just what does it mean to control from a cognitive, intellectual, philosophical standpoint, but what does it mean to control from a somatic experience? What does it mean to control my body? What does it mean to control my emotions or my thoughts or really anything? Um, so yeah, I'm still playing with that question, and I don't believe that there's a line.
Honorable. I don't know the answer either. And this is the point of this podcast. We're exploring, we're exploring consciousness, exploring awareness, which I think, as you said, it's you called it perhaps the holding. I think it's being aware of something
Hmm.
and being fully present, being aware of something, and then shifting awareness to something else. From my experience, awareness lives way beyond the body and of course the five senses and so much more. It exists in infinity. That's the little bit of experience that I can speak of. That makes some sense, if it makes sense
Hmm.
to the mind.
Yeah.
And so I think in the constructs that we create with our minds, there are some lines. Of course, there are artificial lines, but they do live in a certain reality, in a certain timeline, and it's all, from the bigger view, it's all imaginary. It's all of our creation, and we get back to the play. The joyful of playing with the shadows and the light and duality itself. The I think what plays with duality is the oneness, and from what I understand, before the oneness there's the nothingness. So yeah, it's very little that I deem that I understand, but that's the moment where I'm at.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel you. I'm right there with you. I think the exploration is where it's at. I think having answers is way less fun for me than having questions.
Yeah, love it. Where can people find you, learn more about your work? Hopefully, they learned a good amount today. Where can they contact you, or read more, or schedule a call? Anything else you'd like to share about your
Mhm.
work?
Yeah, the best way to contact me is through Instagram. Yeah, so my Instagram is Nicky, Nick period Mac MAC period somatics. So Nicky Mac somatics. And so if you reach out, you can find me there. Um, I've been doing my work in person in New York City for the past 6, 7 years, and I'm only now transitioning to online to spread my work out to a wider audience. So there's not a lot of content in terms of what I do yet online, but over the coming months, there will be more and more on there for me to really share what it is that I do and how I do it. But yeah, for those who are interested, those who are kind of vibing with what I'm talking about and how I'm talking about it, you can hit me up through Instagram. If you don't have Instagram, you can find me on Facebook, Nicky Mac. If you don't have if you have don't have either of that, you can also find me on TikTok. Same name, Nicky Mac Somatics. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much how to reach me. How to reach me.
For the people with no social networks, is there an email address or website you can refer them to?
Yeah, email is N as in Nicky, A as in Angelo, and then my last name Macaluso. So it's NAMACALUSO at gmail.com. I don't have a website or anything like that. So that email would work. Or if somebody just wants to like reach out to text me, I know um, at this point there's like 1,000 telemarketers that have my phone number, so I don't mind putting my phone number out on this. if people like really want to contact me directly, my number, you can send me a text, is 917-376-0720. So yeah, if you're really vibing with what I'm talking about, how I'm talking about it, if you want just like more information about about what I'm talking about, you're curious at all, feel free, send me a text, message me through Instagram, however it is. Yeah, my door's open.
Fantastic. Awesome, Nicky. Thank you for making time today. I'm super joyous to connect with you, start our relationship, and thank you for sharing so many ways to think about life, and spirits and the connections that we have here with everybody. Hopefully, people are inspired and are going to also reach out to you, not only in New York City and beyond. Thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for staying on Earth to express your uniqueness with all of us.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on. You asked some great questions. I really appreciate the depth of the questions and like where you're going with it. Yeah, thank you.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you, Nicky, and
Yeah,
thank you, everybody, for listening. Take care for now. Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope this conversation has supported your journey to wholeness. For full show notes and to explore all my projects, visit yonihavana.com. If you found the show helpful, please leave a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support helps spread awareness, healing, and awakening to others. Much love and gratitude.